From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Via con huevos.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a mystery in your hometown, a cold case that fascinates you, what marketing genius decided to label a small coffee tall, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, getting ready for the baseball postseason by building a bunker in the backyard so she won't have to listen to any of it, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell.
You can stop at the cowbell now, my friend.
I can?
Yeah.
But I like it so much.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering why.
What?
I was wondering why you didn't wait for the traditional gap in the music to say more, because you were giving the cowbell.
I wanted to give it all the airtime it deserves. It is literally the most beautiful goddamn thing I've ever seen. It is a white metallic cowbell, painted enamel cowbell with a unicorn on it that says, "You're my star." And this is from my beloved tipster, Kristen.
Aw, that's nice.
I'm not going to wear it around my neck, but I got to be honest. It just brings me all the joy in the world. I have a small little diorama in the podcast room with my House of Holes, Paul Holes candle. I have a glitter skull, some other stuff. And the beautiful cowbell goes center in the middle of the beautiful pink shag rug. On top of the desk, it's a tiny mini shag rug.
I'll wear it around my neck if you want.
No, you won't. Get your own fucking cowbell, buddy. You have some amazing tipsters send you in a cowbell because this one's mine and you cannot touch it.
Okay.
I'm putting invisible shield around it and don't go near it. So thank you for that. So besides the amazing gift of a unicorn cowbell, which I don't even know how that existed. I don't even know how something so spectacular. I guess leave it to Tipster Kristen. If you want something unique and amazing, she'll find it for you. And I mean, she's kind of a special little angel on earth. So before we start, a couple of updates. I don't want to make this an official session of Corrections Corner with 2Ks. However, I do feel like I have been remiss. In one of producer Mark's intros, he mentioned Hello Kitty flashlight, and I mistakenly said that Sanrio, the company that distributes said Hello Kitty, came out and said Hello Kitty's a boy, and that was wrong. Hello Kitty's a girl, but not a cat. I don't understand how Hello Kitty's a girl. She has no opposable thumbs or even a mouth, as far as I can tell. But, God bless you, Sanrio. So Hello Kitty is a girl. On a small side note, a wonderful place has opened in Santa Clarita called Waffle Comb. And they make bubble waffles that they then put delicious flavors of soft serve ice cream and one of, 20 different toppings. So I went to said Waffle Comb in our area after a friend, Tipster Jennifer, suggested it, and it is everything you would want it to be. They have chocolate and vanilla waffle cones that they make, and they're like a bubble cone, so it's bubble waffles. And then they shape it like a traditional waffle cone, except it's got bubbles. And then the most lovely flavors of soft serve, I like the taro one, and I'm sure someone's going to write in and tell me I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's probably taro, like the card, but with no T. But it's Taro, and it's purple, which is my favorite color. But it's actually, I think, the taro root is kind of eggplanty or sweet potato. I think it's taro.
Wait, they're making ice cream out of eggplant?
So good. I think it's sweet potato. It's like a purple. Ugh. It's so goddamn good, Mark Humphreys. You just shut your pie hole right now. So they also have green tea, but they also have chocolate, vanilla, other flavors. Anyway, so I don't want this to be a long goddamn story. So I go to get my waffle comb cone, and they make them fresh to order. So it's, just exquisitely warm and delicious. And mine was, they were training someone new on the waffle cone makers, and mine was getting, fucked up. So the sweet girl behind the counter was like, I'm so sorry, yours wasn't done right, and we're going to redo it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I wasn't like, pacing and panting and crying and sweating. I was just standing there waiting for my, my delicious waffle cone. And she's so sweet. She goes, here, thank you so much for your patience. And she slid something over the counter and gave it to me. And I was like, okay. And I take it. And I don't know what it is for a couple days. And then I'm like, oh, holy fucking shit. So I've tried to say, holy fucking shit. It's a little chocolate waffle cone Hello Kitty.
Oh, that's the Hello Kitty connection.
So I ate her eyeball and her ear. Because I didn't want her staring at me.
You're a monster.
I'm a monster. That's exactly what I said on Instagram. I said hashtag I'm a monster. I ate her ear and eye first. I don't want her looking at me. I don't want her hearing me as I fucking devour her. And I don't want any animal activists up my ass. She's fucking made a waffle batter. So fuck you.
And she's not a cat, apparently.
No, so I'm eating a girl. I'm eating a little girl
Well, the
kitty.
animal activists don't care about that.
Oh shit, you're right. I don't want the human activists coming at me. She's fucking made a waffle batter. Leave me, just back up off my grill.
Can I ask one question before we
All
move
right,
on, though?
fine, yes, sure.
If she's not a cat, why is she called Hello Kitty?
Why was Kitty Carlisle called Kitty Carlisle, you dumb fuck?
She was a cat.
Kitty Carlisle was a human on To Tell the Truth, or What's My Line?
Oh, I know.
Crazy bastard. Perhaps her name is Hello Catherine. I don't. Will you get off of me? I don't know.
That must be it.
That's probably it. Okay, so that's a little bit of update 1. Update 2 is that tipster Kathleen reminded me that I had made a mistake, which of course producer Mark told me after we were done recording Tipster's 2 cents. But I understand that Tulare, which just kills me to pronounce it this way, Tulare is in the Central Valley, not the Central Coast. So I apologize to all of the Central Valley listeners. I understand Tulare is in the Central Valley, and I apologize. You're not San Luis Obispo, which I believe would be considered the Central Coast. Did I get that right or wrong?
Yeah, that's right. And
All right,
by the way,
you.
I'm not going to correct you while we're on the, I was going to say on the air, but yeah.
You do all the time. Why would you change your tune now?
Because I wouldn't do it.
Oh, okay. Except that you do. I mean, you do it most of the time in a kind, constructive way. But sometimes I do want to push very hard and on your larynx.
But see, I like it when you do that.
Okay, well, you're just fucking weird. So, last update, episode 43, The Murdertizer, with Dr. Kaw Kim's son, who had killed his wife and inadvertently his daughter with my favorite weapon of choice, a yoga ball filled with carbon monoxide that he left to leak slowly from the trunk of his wife's Mini Cooper, was given a life sentence in court on Wednesday. This is the Singapore son, an anesthesiology professor at a top Hong Kong university, was convicted on Wednesday of murdering his wife and daughter with a yoga ball filled with carbon monoxide, in a case that drew intense local interest for its bizarre details and unusual family dynamics, which, makes a lot of sense because, I mean, it would be like I had to suffocate someone using a yoga mat. I don't know why he has to bring yoga into it. I think it's just because he's a bastard. So Dr. Kaw, 53, an associate professor of anesthesia and intensive care at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, was experimenting and testing on the effect of carbon monoxide on rabbits. Mm-hmm. And he was having an affair with his student protege. Mm-hmm. And his wife knew about it, but she wasn't going to divorce him. I think it had to do with splitting the assets, and I totally get it. They had 4 children, and Dr. Kaw even said in court that they didn't split up even though they led pretty much separate lives because neither of them could handle the 4 kids on their own. Because,
oh, dear.
I know. He said we couldn't cope with our 4 children individually. I can't, cope with their mental illnesses and their quirks. And It's like, oh, perhaps you should have just had rabbits.
Yeah, they both sound like kind of icky people, but not that she deserved to die.
No, she did not.
Or the daughter.
No, absolutely. The daughter was supposed to be in school, and she took the day off and went shopping with her mom and then never woke up. And they were found by a jogger as they had parked along a shopping district in Singapore. So, yeah, he was given a life sentence, which they say is the maximum sentence, which I think is pretty fascinating. I assumed in Singapore they would hang you, or cane you. I mean, don't they have other?
They have very tough laws over there.
That's what I thought.
It's amazing that he didn't get the death penalty.
They're talking so too.
If we watched something today, but that happened in Singapore, and they said that somebody was expected to get the death penalty for soliciting murder. So
right,
I'm surprised.
And hanging is what this journalist said in this show we were watching today.
Right.
But they're saying this is the maximum sentence of life in prison. So I'd actually called a friend who's Tipster Sherry, who's kind of an expert on all things Singaporean, and she wasn't available. But I'm going to have to ask her because...
But wait, the yoga ball murder was in Hong Kong.
He's from Hong Kong.
Oh, he's from Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's where he worked.
Oh, but this happened in Singapore. Oh, yeah. Well, so it's a big mystery then.
Yeah, that's what I believe. Maybe I got the information wrong, but I don't think so. I know he's Malaysian, works in Hong Kong, and I believe this happened in Singapore. So maybe I got the information wrong, but...
Wow.
I know.
That is amazing, because they kill you for everything over there.
Right, I was going to say, at least he should get caned.
Yeah, I mean,
up the butthole.
Okay.
Like a cane up his butthole with like bamboo splinters up his butthole. Yes, ouch should be what happens, I think, yeah. So those are just some updates, and this case is really fascinating, and I had actually seen a Dateline episode that had been done several years ago and thought it was fascinating then, but there's even more fascination for it now because of the DNA connection and how they got him. Good old fashioned shoe leather. My beloved law enforcement. I just am always so amazed that there's so many great technological and biological things we can find perpetrators with now, but it just comes down to the human will to solve a motherfucking case and putting pieces together. And it's so interesting. This one, someone else paid for this man's crimes for a long time. And it's a fascinating case. And it was brought up into my imagination with a wonderful nudge from Tipster Kimberly, who submitted it to the Just the Tipsters email address, which please feel free to email, call us, find our Facebook page. Any way you want to get a hold of us, we are willing to answer and thrilled to hear from you. This one, she brought it up about 6 weeks ago, and several things happened that I had to keep putting it back on the back burner. But it's such a great case, and the more you read, the more fascinated you are. And this guy is a real interesting piece of work for so many reasons. So let's get into it. His name is Altemio Sanchez, and he was known, much like Joseph James D'Angelo, who was first known as the East Area Rapist, original Night Stalker, and then the Golden State Killer. Altemio Sanchez was unknown but called the Bike Path Rapist, and then elevated to the Bike Path Killer. And he has a long, very long reign, much like Joseph James D'Angelo, and was eventually captured with help from law enforcement, looking over an old case, connecting the dots, exonerating someone who paid for his crimes, and DNA found after a night out with his wife. So it's such a fascinating case. So Altemio Sanchez, known as Al, and was so, friendly in his neighborhood. The neighbors called him Uncle Al, was actually born in Puerto Rico. And I'm not saying he didn't have a tough, upbringing, a tough life. I just don't care anymore. I just don't care. I used to fret and obsess and worry about Is it, nature versus nurture? Is it, do you come out of the womb evil? I don't know that I believe that, but there are definitely some cases that make me reconsider that. Are you nurtured into evil because of your childhood, your background? You know what? We've all had shit in our life. We've all had tough times. We've all been bullied. Most of us maybe have been, inappropriately sexually touched or assaulted or compromised, men and women. But I just don't think that's enough. I don't know what will convince me that this is enough to turn someone into a rapist murderer. I just don't think that's enough, because I think most of us pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and fucking plow through life. And I believe inherently man is good. I believe that man is good, and that we all have that place in us that we can access. You can call it God. You can call it your soul. You can call it the universe. You can call it the goddess, the earth. I don't care what you call it. It's in you. And you can make a choice to not rape and murder. You just can. It may be a difficult choice for you. You may have to work at it your whole life. I don't care. That's what you're here to do. Work on yourself and be a better fucking person. Definitely a better person than someone who attempts to have a normal life, have kids, a wife, a job, a house, and go about being a monster on your off time. Just no excuse. So Al Sanchez was born in Puerto Rico. His mother had 4 kids, and apparently she really didn't want him, and she took a whole lot of pills to get rid of him. Could definitely have affected how he came out. I don't care. He was born, and before the age of 2, she followed the rest of the family and moved to upstate New York. And they settled around Buffalo, New York. Apparently he was quiet and shy in high school, but very into sports, shy around girls, admitted he was scared of women, didn't know how to approach them. Yeah, I'm scared of dudes. Don't really know how to approach them, didn't know how to approach them. I still didn't rape or kill. I think that a lot of people are shy around the opposite sex or around your own gender. Doesn't really matter.
I didn't talk to girls until I was in high school. In like my junior, senior year, I had no idea how to.
And you're not alone.
Yeah, no, that's not an excuse of any kind.
No, I think there were a lot of excuses brought up later after he was caught, because he did seem to be quite gobsmacked. If you see pictures of him when he's first arrested, he's like, what's happening? A day or two later, he just looks like his eyes are the size of, the moon. It's kind of hilarious. Even investigators are like, well, he seemed very shocked. Yeah, I guess he thought he'd just go on being a monster for the rest of his life. And they caught him, he started young for sure, but they caught him when he was fairly young. He was 48 when he was caught, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I guess he turned 60 this year. Happy birthday, Al. So Al and his family live in upstate New York. Shy, quiet kid in high school. Who cares? He had 1 brother, 2 sisters, and he's described by all of his family members as just this serious, quiet, nice kid. So he ends up marrying his wife, Kathleen, when he finds out she's pregnant, and they have 2 sons. And he coaches the kids' basketball team at their school. He was the Little League baseball coach. He loved golf and gardening and, just wanted a regular life, right? He ended up working at this company for 23 years. They had changed names. It's a brass and copper, American Brass Company. They changed their name. I'll find the new name. But they have a plant. He's a machinist and factory worker. They have a plant on Military Road in the Kenmore, Buffalo area. and he lived in a neighborhood called Cleveland Hill in the area also. And he worked afternoon and evening shifts. So just remember that part. Just remember that he worked afternoon and evening. So he's married. They have a lovely home. He and his wife invite neighbors over for parties and cookouts. It's, they're just regular old Uncle Al and his wife and his two sons, and living, a life, and blah-de-dee, blah, blah, blah. So there are cases that go back to 1981 through 2006, when he's eventually arrested with the help of DNA and a lot of amazing shoe leather. But he was, in his early 20s then, and, they're calling it a 25-year reign. But it's really kind of bookended by 16 years, 1990 through 2006. And much like I was shocked to find Joseph D'Angelo able to rape and murder on his wedding anniversary and on his birthday, apparently anniversaries are important to this sort of mindset. And we'll find out that anniversary as we go along. It's really pretty awful. But there's a 1985 case that they're looking into tying to him, and another man spent 22 years in prison for his atrocities, which is, always a charming thing. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? In 1990, he rapes and kills a University of Buffalo sophomore. She's studying communications, and she was training for the New York City Marathon on these very safe, wooded, beautiful bike paths. And she was running on September 29th, 1990, along Elliott Creek. And she was caught from behind. He uses ligatures, garrote someone. He has a very bizarre MO. He would choke them from behind, drag them into the woods, but he would choke them only until they passed out, and then he could beat and rape them. Now, he is linked to between 15 and 20 rapes, and at this point only 3 murders, although there's at least one other, the one from 1985, and potentially some other ones. But he liked to strangle or suffocate them with a ligature wire, and then when he would rape them, and then they would come to. So there is a survivor. She was 17 at the time, so we have a pseudonym. We don't have her real name. But when she was notified that he was arrested, she was shocked because she couldn't believe that they actually got him after all these years. So what's fascinating is that he left DNA in every victim he left DNA. So they knew that he was of Hispanic descent, and an FBI profiler said, you know what, I think he's going to frequent prostitutes. And he did. And yet those connections were never made. In fact, on one occasion, he was arrested for soliciting a prostitute from an undercover police officer, and his fine was $75.
Jeez.
He was arrested in 1991 and in 1999. And if they had, listened to the FBI profile, his name is, Altemio Sanchez, probably going to be Hispanic, a Hispanic man who lives and works in the area and frequents prostitutes.
And DNA testing was just starting in 91, and certainly in 99, my God.
You want to know what breaks my heart, producer Mark? He was arrested in 99 for soliciting prostitutes, and they took a blood sample.
And they didn't bother to compare with them. Oh, for God's sake.
Didn't test it for DNA. So 7 years later, 2 more murders, many, many rapes. Just amazing. Amazing. So Linda Yellum is considered his first murder in 1990. Second murder tied to him via DNA is Majane Mazer, and she was actually a prostitute, known to be a prostitute. Beautiful girl, beautiful pictures of her. Her family obviously submitted, just beautiful girl. But she was murdered in November of 1992 near an Amtrak rail line in downtown Buffalo. Now, this is the one that's the most heartbreaking. I mean, they're all heartbreaking. Obviously, no victim is better than another. But Joan Diver, chemistry professor at the University of Buffalo, mother of 4, was beaten and murdered on the anniversary of his first murder, September 29th, 2006. Now, this podcast is going to air at the beginning of October, but we're recording it on the anniversary of his murders because I can't even believe that these anniversaries mean something to killers. And what is really heartbreaking is in a audio clip we'll play later, Joan Diver's husband said this time of year, the anniversary hits him hard and he can't even stand the changing of the colors, the fall season. He gets anxiety ridden and he doesn't know why until he remembers what happened. It's just awful. And the sad thing is about Joan Diver, he ruined his own plan. He choked her, beat her, and she died, so he didn't get to rape her.
Jesus.
I guess maybe he only rapes them while they're still alive, even though they have been choked into unconsciousness. So he's still known as the bike path rapist, even though there are some murders along different bike paths. They finally step it up and decide to call him the bike path murderer in this wonderful Amherst area of Buffalo. Beautiful wooded area, just gorgeous. So in 1992, they're thoroughly investigating the death of Linda Yellum in September of 1990. And they tie this DNA to someone, Al Sanchez, who has not been apprehended. But they also tie it to 6 other rapes in the area, one in Delaware Park. They're trying to connect him to a 17-year-old girl's rape in Hamburg, New York. There's DNA to connect the same rapist to survivors, but he doesn't have a type. So they're ages 14 to 44. So it's not like he has a type. Although they're all beautiful women, they're all different ages. And there are similar circumstances. He strikes only in the morning. Remember, he works afternoons and evenings. So he gets off work, and instead of going to 7-Eleven and, getting a Dr. Pepper, he goes to a bike path and rapes a woman, or solicits a prostitute and attempts to rape her, and that doesn't work, and he gets arrested and gets a $75 fine. So they're starting to link these together with DNA, but not to the person who has delivered the DNA. What they knew before they arrested him was that he is blood type O. He's a white man with Native American ties. His genetic makeup most closely resembles a Hispanic man. Between the years of 1992 and 1994, he has lost the ability to produce sperm, either through a vasectomy or a medical condition. They know that the victims that are survivors have told him that he said his name was Dave, that he had just gotten out of jail for raping and murdering a woman. He wears different types of clothing, a gray jogging suit, blue jeans, a red t-shirt, a blue flannel shirt, a jacket. He also carried a duffel bag and a fanny pack, so that he has his kill kit or rape kit. And they think that he had medical or military training. I honestly don't think he had either of those things, but this is what they thought at the time. He would strangle the victims, drag them into a wooded area, rape them. He would use strips of duct tape or medical adhesive tape to cover their eyes, nose, and mouth. And 10 of the attacks have occurred in the mornings. Also between the months of May and October, on every day except Sunday, because I'm sure he was in church.
He's a good church-going man.
Yeah, I bet he was. I bet he was, an altar boy or a deacon or... Yeah. Sorry. So not only did they get it narrowed down to get his DNA from a restaurant, they really think what happened is that a cold case detective was looking over the file where a man named Anthony Capozzi was arrested for 2 rapes. A sample of DNA is linked to rapes which Anthony Capozzi was wrongly convicted in 1985. Once police made the realization that Capozzi was in jail for these 2 rapes, even though the DNA matched Altemio Sanchez,
who still hadn't been identified at
no,
that point. Right.
No. He's freed from state prison after serving 22 years for rapes. They said that he resembled Altemio Sanchez at the time. They looked like each other very much, but the DNA ruled him out and did not rule Altemio Sanchez in until later in the case. So the entire time, Anthony Capozzi has maintained his innocence. He's denied parole over the 2 decades. He's schizophrenic. His attorney filed a civil lawsuit, and he received $4.25 million from the state of New York for being wrongfully convicted and in prison. And former New York State Assembly member Sam Hoytand and New York State Senator Dale Volcker introduced legislation that would expedite these lawsuits and get DNA testing done quicker, and they call it Anthony's Law, which is, a nice thing. So a detective is looking over, in 2006, a detective is looking over the Capozzi case, and he's like, these 2 rapes that this guy was convicted of look very much like other rapes in the area. And that's when they test the DNA and find out it was not Anthony Capozzi. So 2 days after one of the survivors was attacked and raped, she told the police that she saw the man who raped her driving away from a parking lot in a shopping center, and she wrote down the license plate number.
Good for her.
Mm-hmm. And if this had only been... Anyway, so the detectives questioned the owner of the car, Wilfredo Sanchez Caraballo. And he had a solid alibi for where he was. He's like, I have not driven that car in years. I wasn't anywhere near there. He forgot to mention that he had lent the car to his nephew, Altemio Sanchez.
Oh, he neglected to...
He neglected to mention that.
He inadvertently forgot.
For 25 years.
Uh-huh.
And he was questioned again, and he said, I'd loaned this car to my nephew, Al Sanchez, and I wasn't driving it that day, but he was.
And this is after they've identified Al. This is 25 years later?
Mm-hmm. So his alibi was blown apart.
I mean,
with his uncle's statement. I know.
Uncle, whatever his name is, should be in jail too.
Wilfredo Sanchez Caraballo? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Will should, yeah. Yeah.
How many women were raped and killed because Uncle Wilfredo?
Well, 3 killed and 20 raped.
Good God.
Yeah. And the thing is that a lot of the rapes that were attributed to him are going to go unprosecuted because the statute of limitations was in effect. Now, New York has changed that, and I'm remarkably grateful. There's no statute of limitations now on what's called first-degree rape. I don't know that rape should be degreed, but if that's how they want to do it, that's fine. But the new statute can't be applied retroactively for the rapes that he did commit from 81 through 2006 or something. I mean, just it's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. But I am grateful to New York for for doing that, because I think it's vitally important. Vitally important.
Yeah, good for New York.
I think so too.
Yeah, that's a very positive step that other states should look at.
And I know producer Mark and I don't agree, but I think it should be a federal thing, and he thinks it's okay, libertarian. Let's not get in a fight on the podcast.
It's your show, baby.
Yeah. So besides what he is known to be tied to, he is suspected in an ongoing investigation of a murder in 1985, a 15-year-old girl, Catherine Harold. She was beaten and murdered very similarly to his other victims. And she was found on the railroad tracks of the CSX rail line in Kenmore on July 1st of 1985. And that's it's behind where he had worked. So that's pretty interesting. So Deputy District Attorney Frank Sedita did not ask Altemio Sanchez if he'd killed Catherine Harold during questioning prior to his sentencing. And District Attorney Frank Clark said, there's no evidence that, Sanchez killed Catherine. So I don't know if it will ever be tied to him, and they didn't question him. And apparently he's the kind of guy that's, I'm not going to say I did that one. Although what was so fascinating to me is that after denying, and his attorney is like, oh no, my client had a very difficult childhood. He was abused physically, sexually by his stepfather. It just the entire time didn't happen. During his sentencing, he says, this is the quote from Altemio Sanchez: I just wanted to mention that whatever sentence I get today, I deserve. I know I'm going to be spending life behind bars, never see the streets again, but I did these crimes, and I should pay for these crimes.
Well, better late than never.
Yeah, thanks, Al. So, August 15th of 2007, he's sentenced to 75 years to life in prison. And he was sentenced by New York State Supreme Court Justice Christopher Burns. So he's currently now in the Clinton Correctional Facility in the Adirondack Mountains. So on January 13th of 2007, he is having dinner with his wife at Soleil Restaurant, a Latin American restaurant. And he gets up and leaves, and they take silverware, a glass, and a napkin of his. Now, they know that it's someone who's type O blood, who lives in the area, who is Hispanic, who is not a secretor or is not able to develop sperm after either a vasectomy or an accident. So they have all of that, and they get his DNA, and 2 days later, January 15th, they get the results back, and a grand jury indicts him, and they arrest him, and that was it. And he, was 10 hours. 10 hours, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. They arrest him. They indict him. They sentence him. And then he says, oh, by the way, I feel like I should probably tell you this is what happened. And this audio clip is a very fascinating thing for me. It's from WIBV TV in Buffalo, New York. Could you hit the clip, producer Mark?
Altemio Sanchez was called the bike path killer for a series of attacks over decades in Western New York. Now he's trying to tell his story from behind prison walls. He sent a letter that went to News 4's George Rickert, who has tonight's special assignment.
It's been nearly 5 years since its capture, so I sent a letter to Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, asking Altemio Sanchez for an interview. He responded within a few days, saying that he has declined all interviews. But then he wrote this: as for prison, we prisoners are considered scums of the earth. That's what the world calls us. That's the way people think. You see, Mr. Rickert, we are not perfect, not one. We all have a dark side hidden inside all of us. Don't you think so, Mr. Rickert? Don't we lie every chance we get, and when we do, we store it deep inside, which is our dark side?
If you read this letter and your viewers look at it, I question, do all of us have a dark side in us? a dark side that leads to murder and rape of women over such a long period of time. Mr. Sanchez, this isn't true. These may be your words, but they don't reflect society.
State Police Captain Stephen Nigrelli and Erie County Sheriff's Captain Scott Petronic headed up the task force that finally caught the bike path killer after 25 years. He has been linked by DNA to nearly 20 rapes and 3 murders. 2 of the murders were on the same date, September 29th.
That's in the makeup of a serial murderer. They're ritualistic. They believe in anniversaries. They return to the scene of the crime.
But the anniversary of Joan Diver's death here on a Clarence bike path is something her husband tries not to observe. Her husband, Stephen Diver, tells me September 29th to him is a black, cold day. Over the years, it has been a challenge to prepare for the sorrow and sadness of this time of year. The loss of Joan is intensified in early fall, and it creates a strong sorrow. It begins when the sunlight changes to lower angle of incidence and lasts until the trees lose their fall colors.
I'm still very nervous about coming down here.
Mary Vishala used to run this path a few times a week, but has avoided it for 5 years now. Just a few weeks ago, she got up the courage to start biking it again.
I think of him every time I come down the path. I can't help but think about what he's done and Joan Diver's family.
It seems now, I think the families, for the most part, are trying not to think about it. They're trying not to just constantly relive what happened to their loved ones.
And even the killer seems unwilling to relive it. Why, Mr. Rickard, would anybody want to hear my story? There's too much pain and suffering on both sides. We need to move on with our lives. The pain will always be there. We need to grow stronger and have faith in God to lead us in a happier life, to live in peace and love with one another.
Do you think he's sorry? Not at all. Whatever gets him through the night in his cell is what he's saying here. It's his inner excuse for what he's done, and it's a cop-out.
Yeah, that last quote is from New York State Police Captain Steve Nigrelli, and I can't help but agree with him. It is a cop-out. It angers me greatly to hear Altemio Sanchez say that we all need to love one another and get closer to God, because I don't know what his God is like, but other than him saying, yeah, I deserve this sentence and I did these things, there just felt like a hollowness in it. And most people who do this, and especially over decades while living another life, are not truly sorry. And I feel like he might be one of those guys. He might be a more charismatic version of the Golden State Killer. He knows certain things to say that might help him get by in life. He, copped to it in a sense. It just did not feel real. I don't know what I expect from someone who may or may not have a soul, or whose soul may be so damaged or blackened that they can't access a part of them where truth lives. But I think that Captain Nigrelli is right. I think his answer to the journalist about an interview is kind of a cop-out. I think he'd rather be known in his secretive way, keeping his cases to himself. There are probably many more that we don't know about. There are definitely many that will not be prosecuted because of a statute of limitations. Who knows what might be revealed? He's still a young enough man. He's 60. That more DNA testing, if there's anything that you want to do to contribute to helping get people like this where they belong, whatever your beliefs are, doesn't have to be the death penalty, but definitely in a place where you can't do this to other people, consider contributing to the testing of DNA rape kits and more cowbell.
And if you can, send us a tip. jttipsters@gmail.com or call the Tipster hotline at 832-847-7837. And remember to subscribe and rate the podcast. See you next time.